Hello YouTube, this is Mike, and this is the 4 Things That Heal BPD and NPD Abuse channel. And that's really what I'm here to help you do, which is to accomplish exactly what I did. What was it that I did exactly? That's most important for you to know. I was able to do some very specific things that allowed me to completely and 100% cure myself of the pain and the emptiness and the trauma that happened to me as a result of being in a relationship with someone who had untreated borderline personality disorder. If you stay till the end of this video, I will tell you exactly what those 4 things are, and then you can choose to do them or not. So the question today is, does or did your relationship with your abusive, borderline, or narcissistic partner, did that help you in some way? Did you learn something in the relationship? Since I've had this channel for the past couple of years, there's been no shortage of people who've left comments saying something to the effect that it wasn't all a waste. I learned this about myself. I learned that about myself. In fact, one person that I remember, I'm sure there's more, but one person I remember talked about how they choose to get in these relationships because it reminds them so much of their childhood past that then they can really think about what they went through, and then it helps them to learn all about it. And that's it, you know, they kept on repeating that word, to learn. Other people have said things like they stay in relationships to test themselves. I just read a comment on here just today that said, I stayed with him so that I could prove to myself that I was self-sufficient and self-empowered. So, my opinion, what do I think about all of that? Do I think number one, that staying with an abusive partner, whether they're borderline or narcissist, do I think that you can learn anything from that? So the truth is that people say these things. I learned, yes, it wasn't a waste. I was with them for 10 years. I was with them for this amount of time, and yes, it was painful, but I learned so much about myself. Is that valid? Well, in my opinion, no. We tell ourselves these things in order to not, number one, to be able to justify our addiction. It would be the same as if you were slamming heroin every day and you said, yes, it's totally, completely destroying my life, but I learned so much about myself. You would say, that's ridiculous. Somebody taking a hammer and hitting themselves in the head with the hammer every day for years, and you'd say, why would you do that? You know that it's destructive. Oh yes, I know that this is destroying my brain, but I'm learning so much about myself. And the fact of the matter is that you are stuck in a Stockholm syndrome that you can't get out of. You are completely powerless to leave. There is nothing for you to learn. I was in my relationship with my borderline ex for a relatively short period of time. And I can tell you that everything that I needed to learn about that relationship happened within the first 2 weeks. Because it took about 2 weeks, luckily for me, for her to go through the idealization phase and then to have a devaluation phase where I really felt off. And then once I got into that hamster wheel of, because again, what happens is, here's the cycle. The cycle is that you, for whatever reason, whether you are aware of it or not, you have a deep emptiness within you. You have a deep, deep longing to be loved and to be seen. This is very normal, especially if, it could be anything. It could be from childhood. Most of the time, especially if I talk with somebody long enough, we are going to find out that there was some dynamic in childhood that created a transactional relationship where they got their value based on what they did, not who they were. But even if I give you the benefit of the doubt, as some people have said, my childhood was perfect. I had nothing wrong. My parents did nothing wrong. It was because of, and then they talk about some tragedy in their life. I'm going to give you that because I had been in 12-step work for 38 years when I met my borderline ex. So I knew everything there was to know about codependent, dysfunctional relationships. And what had happened is I had recently lost the love of my life. My soulmate had passed away. And because of that, I was in a deep state of pain. I was missing her tremendously. And along came the little borderline, and she picked up on that, and she intuited and became exactly what I wanted and what I needed. And so then I transferred that longing and that loss for my fiance who had passed, and I gave it to her. So it created a bond that I couldn't escape from. Once that had happened, then you start to find out, oh, the person you're with isn't exactly perfect, and in fact they threaten to leave you, or they do things that make you walk on eggshells, or all of a sudden now you're insecure and you want to do absolutely everything possible to keep them because you want what they gave you. You want that first amazing experience, that seduction experience where they treated you so well. You want that back. And you want it so badly that you feel that you're going to die if you don't get it. And so once you go through that, you fall madly in love with them because for whatever reason, there's some emptiness inside of you that they seem to fill completely. And then as soon as you feel that you found what you're looking for, they do something to make you afraid that you will lose it. And then you're on the hamster wheel. And so it becomes this roller coaster of making sure that they feel loved, meeting whatever need that they have, dealing with whatever abandonment, neglect, or an abuse that they throw at you. And in response to that, then you get trapped. Now, once you're in that, you can't get out. You're powerless. So what do? That's an intolerable state for the mind. It's intolerable for our ego as well. I mean, it's really pathetic to be, trapped in a relationship with somebody that treats you horribly. And that it's pathetic to have hope, and the need to be loved is so bad that you're willing to put up with any kind of neglect or abuse they throw at you. So what do? You justify it. The realization that you're helpless and you can't leave is intolerable. It's so demeaning. And, we then suffer from this feeling of not being good enough. And that's kind of part of that. So we do what we can to make ourselves feel better. So we start telling ourselves, it's true, this is a blah, 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 but I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about myself those 30 years. I'm learning so much about myself. I am staying because I am finding ways to be self-empowered. I am finding ways to be independent, and I'm testing my independence because I know I can't depend on them to be there for me. And the truth of the matter is that you can't leave. It doesn't matter what you tell yourself, you can't leave, so you make excuses. You make excuses for them. You hold on to the hope. You keep telling yourself that if I just do this thing perfect, or if you've just gotten through a devaluation or they've discarded you and they've hoovered you back, and after hoovering you back, you've had this talk, and maybe you've even laid down the law. You said, you know, if you want me in your life, you're going to have to treat me this way and that way. Or you've got them to say, look, uh, I'll share my feelings with you, they say. You say to them, you have to just talk to me. You can't just leave. Instead of getting mad at me, the truth is that you're afraid that I'm going to hurt you. You have to tell me that instead of acting out. And you whatever deal you make, and then they tell you in the moment with absolute honesty in their eyes, and they are able to identify why they did what they did, and that makes you feel better because you think, well, if they know why they did it, they won't do it again. And they make promises to you that they absolutely mean, and then they might give you gifts. They might treat you really well. They might put you back on that oxytocin cloud again because they're throwing so much love at you. And so the hope that it's going to finally be okay keeps you going. And then, of course, they do the same thing they always do. They hurt you, they devalue you, they neglect you, they abuse you, they ghost you, whatever it is that they do. And because of that, you then tell yourself why you've stayed. I've stayed because I've learned so much about myself. I've learned to be independent. But you don't understand because you don't want to acknowledge the fact that you've been completely wasting your life. Because as I said, for all of the information that I needed to know about myself, I learned in the first cycle. You get love bombed, you fall in love, they devalue you, attack you, or ghost you, or neglect you, or whatever it is that they do to devastate you. And then they hoover you back. Once that has happened one time, whatever it is that you were going to learn, you've already learned it. It's like you hit yourself in the head with a hammer. Bonk. What did you learn from that? Well, I learned that when I feel like such and such, I can't resist picking up a hammer and hitting myself on the head. And I've learned that my skull is actually able to be fractured, and it is bad for my brain, and it really hurts, and I feel awful. And I've learned that it is healthier for my body if instead of hitting myself on the head with a hammer, I do things like put conditioner in my hair, if I had any, and I get massages, and I massage my scalp, and I treat myself in ways that make me feel good. That's what I've learned. So why do you keep hitting yourself on the head with a hammer? Well, I've obviously got a lot more to learn. Obviously, there's nothing more to learn. So I'm here to give you the bitter truth. You didn't learn anything. If you had learned something, the thing to have learned would be, wow, I loved this person. I didn't do anything wrong. They made me feel I was safe. Then they acted in ways that were unsafe and very hurtful to me. And the truth is, I didn't do anything to deserve that. What have I learned? I've learned that this person is incapable of acting in a way that makes sense. And I am extremely vulnerable to them. And I've learned that I can get myself into real trouble if I have any contact with this person. I've learned that when they come back and tell me how much they love me and how sorry they are, and when they tell me all of the ways that they're going to change, and they explain to me why they did what they did in order to make me feel safe, because in my mind, I think, because when I know I've done something wrong to somebody and I learn a different way of doing it, I act differently from then on. Just like when they tell me I have to speak to them this exact way and do this exact thing, I do that. However, even though I do that, that very thing they told me to do yesterday is the one thing they can't stand today. But I'm a rational person, and I'm capable of following through on what people tell me to do. So I've learned that this person isn't capable of acting in a way that makes me feel good on a continuous basis. I've learned that they will continue to hurt me. I've learned that they are not rational and they cannot control their emotions. And I've learned that being with them, no matter how much hope or no matter how hard I try, is harmful to me. So now we get to the cure. I cured myself 100% of the pain and the trauma that I felt. So if you're out of the relationship with your borderline or your narcissist, you feel empty, you feel painful, you have this black hole inside of you, you're full of anxiety, you can't stop thinking about them. Well, guess what? That is not going to go away. Time will not heal that. Let me repeat myself. That is not going to go away. Your pain is not going to go away. Time will not heal what you are feeling. You have to treat it as though you've been bitten by a zombie that has a zombie virus. You have now been infected with a trauma cycle. It won't go away. Have I made myself clear? So stop telling yourself in time it will go away. It won't. The good news is there is something you can do that will, in fact, completely eradicate the virus within you that's causing this pain that won't go away. And that is to do the 4 things. I call it the 4 things. I didn't make up the 4 things. I simply codified them. I think it's important to tell people about it because for people who have been in relationships with borderlines and narcissists, there isn't a whole lot of understanding out there. People now know if you come to the realization you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, they go, oh, there are these things called treatment centers, and there's these things called Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and everybody in the world knows about that. And you hear about somebody, you think they might have a drinking problem, the whole family gets together, everybody knows to say, you should go into treatment, you should go to Alcoholics Anonymous. But when you've been in a relationship with one of these unfortunately mentally disordered people who are incapable of acting rationally and consistently, and they continue to harm you, the world says, oh, you're out of it? Well, good, you'll get over it. Time heals everything. Because they don't know that that's not true. And they don't know that there's a place that you can go to actually begin to heal. So, here's what I did to completely 100% cure myself of the trauma infection I experienced from being with an untreated, undiagnosed borderline. Number 1, you go complete no contact. That means that you make it impossible for them to contact you. So many people say, I left, I went no contact, and yet I find out, in their comment that they're still in communication and they still hopefully someday, and that's not no contact. Or people will say, I went no contact, and then she called me. What could I do? I had to talk to her. I went no contact, but then she came over to my house. Well, what could I do? I went no contact, but then she kept coming to my work. So I didn't say that no contact was necessarily easy, did I? No contact is no contact. If you live in a house that is built on top of a radioactive dump, staying in the house, the radioactive material will end up killing you. And it doesn't matter how much incense that you put up in the house or anything like that. If you stay in that house, the radiation from underneath it will kill you. There's only one solution. You have to move. So if your borderline or narcissist ex knows where you live, you move. If they have your phone number, you throw your phone in the river and you get a new phone. If they know where you work, you get another job. If they're constantly coming over to your house, then you get the cops to put a restraining order. Those aren't easy things to do. You're married, well, you get a divorce. You have to give them access to the kids, then you get a lawyer. The lawyer does all the talking for you, but that's expensive. I don't know what to tell you. Living in a house on top of a radioactive dump, it's expensive to move. You can't sell the house now because it's worthless and it takes money to move. I don't know how to help you. You can either stay in the house that you've paid for and die from radioactive poisoning, or you can lose a bunch of money and live in a studio apartment somewhere and be healthy for the rest of your life. It's up to you. You don't want to be, you want to be healed from this pain. First step is to go no contact. And you do whatever it takes to make it impossible for them to ever contact you ever again. Sorry. Number 2. So that's the first thing, go no contact. Second thing is you work all 12 steps of coda.org or whatever 12-step program you want. Codependence Anonymous is a general one, because if you're on here, you are a codependent. If you have some other kind of addiction like gambling or sex or alcohol or drugs, then you can choose one of the other anonymous programs. Doesn't matter, the steps are the same. But thing number 2 is to work all 12 steps with a sponsor. You can't do it alone. If you do it alone, you will bullshit yourself into thinking you're doing them. So a lot of people sit there and they read through them, in a meeting, and they'll read through all the 12 steps and they go, yeah, I did the 12 steps. Really, when? Yesterday, when I sat in a meeting and I looked and I read them and I did them all in my head. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually do them with a sponsor. Now let me be clear. I didn't say that thing number 2 was to go to meetings and like it. I didn't say that. If you do go to meetings and like it, great. There's nothing that won't harm you in the slightest. Every time you're in a meeting, you are not with your borderline or your narcissist. Great. So that is one place you can go where they won't go. So there's nothing wrong with going to meetings, but I didn't say thing number 2 was to go to CODA and like it. I didn't say that. I said work the steps. So the whole idea of going to CODA is in the meetings. The point of it is so that people can identify, so that they will then know what the program is and work it. Now let me be clear. There's no shortage of people in any 12-step group or meeting that are not doing the steps. And they go there and they whine and complain and they talk forever and they, oh my God, I wish this person would shut up. And it's obvious that they're miserable and you can't stand listening to them. Yeah, that's because 12-step meetings are a place where sick people go. You're in pain, you go to these meetings. So saying, I don't like going to those meetings because there's all those messed up people, is like saying, I had a broken leg and I didn't get it set, so it ended up, growing back all warped. And people say, why didn't you go to the hospital? The hospital is filled with sick people. I don't like being around sick people. That depresses me. Well, that's where sick and injured people go, is the hospital. So people who are emotionally damaged and full of denial and full of low self-esteem and are miserable, all of that, and depressing, they go to those meetings because of that. So I didn't say go to meetings and like it. I said go to meetings and work the 12 steps with a sponsor. My suggestion is to find a sponsor as soon as possible. So if you go to meetings and there are people that aren't sponsoring, you can go to a Zoom meeting. You can go to a live one if you want, but there are Zoom meetings. You can go online anytime and ask around until you find somebody who's willing to work the steps with you. Work the steps as soon as possible. Get to step 4 as soon as possible. So if you get a sponsor and you say, I'd like to work the steps, and the sponsor says, we'll work the steps later, you say, thank you, it was really great meeting you. Here's my number. I'd love to go out for coffee, but I really want to work the steps. And you go and find a sponsor who will work the steps with you. Have I gotten that in? It's not about sitting in meetings. It's not just about having friends around you and having support. Nothing wrong with that. That's one of the great benefits of it. It's about taking the medicine that will cure you of your pain. So you're sitting there, I'm reading these comments of people I'm in, which I understand. I'm in huge amounts of pain. The emptiness is destroying me. Maybe if I go to a CODA meeting, I can get some support. Maybe, But maybe not. Maybe they will be so wrapped up in their pain that they will suck all the oxygen out of the room and you won't get the support that you needed. So what? You go to a meeting, you don't get the support you want, you're going to leave? It's not about that. When you go to the doctor to get the antibiotics to cure you of the zombie virus or whatever your infection you have, you don't go and sit in the waiting room and look for support. Oh yeah, do you have jock itch? Yeah, me too. You know, that really itches in the morning, doesn't it? Or in the middle of the night, I really need to scratch my butt crack. I know that really, God, that bugs the crap out of me. Well, that might make you feel better, but it's not going to cure you of your jock itch. What will cure you of your jock itch is if you get the ointment and you put it on. What will cure you of your pain is if you do the steps, if you work the steps. And you need to do it with a sponsor. And my suggestion is to get to step 4 as soon as possible. I've got a video on this channel about step 4 and the steps. So go and watch that video. So that is thing number 2. Thing number 1 and thing number 2 are non-negotiable. Going no contact and working the steps. If you don't do those things, in my experience, not just my opinion, but in my experience, which means my own personal experience and my observations of other people who have been in these relationships. If you do not do thing 1 and thing 2 with everything that you have, then there is a good chance you may never completely recover. You might feel a little bit better, like you go and you get somebody makes you feel better because they talk to you. That's important. But that isn't going to cure your problem. Venting, telling everybody, my borderline did this, my narcissist did that. Yeah, don't you hate it when they do that? But, oh yeah, and that might make you feel better, but it's not going to take away the infection. What will take away the infection is that 4th step, guaranteed. That 4th step will get rid of it, and then the remainder of the steps will keep you from getting reinfected. So that's thing 1 and thing 2. Those are non-negotiable. If you don't do them, I can't have any pity for you. I've given you the medication. You've just chosen not to take it. Thing number 3 is extremely helpful if you get a good psychologist, because that's thing number 3, is working with a psychologist. But psychology in and of itself won't fix the problem. Sorry, it won't. Psychology is great for taking a look at the unconscious, and you'll get an awareness of why you do what you do. You know, that's why you said you were in these relationships, because you wanted to learn about yourself. Well, you don't have to be in these crazy nutbag, painful relationships to learn about yourself. You can learn about yourself in therapy. Well, you can learn about yourself in working the steps for sure. But therapy is where you learn about yourself. You look at your unconscious motivations. Oh, I was actually trying to get my mom to love me, and my mom neglected me as a kid, and this is me personally. So I chase after women that are emotionally unavailable so that I can do it over again, but this time do it right, so I can actually fix that little kid inside of me that never got loved. Oh, that's interesting, but that knowledge doesn't stop you from doing anything. It just makes you aware that, okay, so now I know that putting the heroin in my system is actually killing me. Won't stop you from going out and getting your fix. But if you are doing the steps with while working with a psychologist, that can work really well. Of course, you got to find the one that works well for you. So number 3 is great, but it's not necessary. You can't afford it. No problem. Wait until you can. Thing number 4 is really just thing number 2. It's the 11th step, sought through prayer and meditation. So what a lot of people do is they'll do thing 1 and thing 4, and they'll say, I'm trying to do the 4 things. I'm doing thing 1. And what they really mean by thing 1 is they got discarded, and so they have no contact, but they want me to believe that they went no contact. Sometimes they actually do go no contact. And then they go straight into thing 4. And they go to some meditation class, or they get guided meditations, or and they're doing the meditations for, I can't say the wrong reason, Because the real reason to meditate is to be able to see your craziness in action. So when you're doing some meditation, you're able to look at your thoughts, to look at your impulses, and to go, oh yeah, there's that impulse again. Oh wow, there's the, oh. It's a way of looking at yourself from an objective standpoint. It's not about making yourself feel better. Although meditation gives a lot of peace and a lot of serenity. It balances all kinds of good chemicals in the brain. But the point of it isn't to make yourself feel peaceful. The point of it is to help you get a better objective look at yourself and give you the power to take action in a positive way. And as I said, I'm really repeating myself because thing 4 is really the 11th step. So back to just thing 2. So those are the 4 things. Go complete no contact, make it impossible for them to contact you for the rest of your life. Number 2, you work all 12 steps of coda.org with a sponsor, especially focusing on step 4. Number 3, you get a psychologist that you trust, that will help you, that will support you being in the 12 steps. Believe it or not, there are some psychologists, or I don't know if they're psychologists, but there are some counselors out there that will tell you not to work the 12 steps. I have no idea what that's about. Where they got how in the world they can call themselves counselors, I don't know. And then number 4 is you do some meditation. Go no contact, work the 12 steps, work with a psychologist, meditate every day. If you do those 4 things, especially 1 and 2, with everything that you have, my guarantee is that you will heal. You will completely heal. How long will it take? I don't know. Might take you, like me, a couple of months. Might take you longer than that. But you will completely heal, 100%. So there you go. What do you learn by being in a relationship with a narcissist or a borderline? You learn that you have some strange, messed up desire to be hurt and you can't get out of it. That's the only thing you're going to learn from it. And what do you do to get out of it? You do the 4 things. That's it. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.